Welcome to the Big Picture Show with your host, Josh Tickell. We are the new media, so don't forget to like and share this podcast. Welcome to the Big Picture Show with your host, Josh Tickell. It's been a beautiful week in Ojai, California. The colors are finally starting to change. We have fall. It is amazing and wonderful. Thought I'd begin with a little bit of news this week. This in from the World Economic Forum, a global governance effort for geoengineering. They write, engineering the climate, notice the word engineering, the climate, is not without risks. Creating great plot lines for Hollywood blockbusters and making environmental decisions even more complex. Now, what the World Economic Forum is writing about is they were talking about something called geoengineering. That is engineering the very basis of how the climate works, okay? So what are they doing? How are they doing this? Geoengineering, we hear about this crazy word, and here is the big economic forum. These are the G nations, the ones that really decide the fate of the world. What are they talking about? So they have a cute little graphic that they put out, and it breaks it down. And so here are the things that they're looking at. Ocean fertilization. Okay, that means sprinkle some stuff to stimulate CO2 growing animals, organisms in the ocean, sprinkle it throughout the ocean. I don't know how I feel about that. Afforestation, that is a fancy word for planting trees. Air capture, convert CO2 into a solid using sodium hydroxide. Desert surface albedo, now that's not to be confused with desert surface libido. This is about covering the desert with reflective material, like big mirrors, literally putting them into the desert, okay? Then there's stratospheric aerosol, injecting sulfur to reflect sunlight. So basically putting particles throughout the atmosphere to reflect sunlight back into the atmosphere. Don't know how I feel about that one. Then there's space reflectors. I kid you not, ladies and gentlemen, they are looking at space reflectors, launching mirrors into space to reflect sunlight back to space. This is part of the plan, okay? Then they break these things down in terms of cost, danger, effectiveness, what have you. Guess which is the cheapest. Guess. I'll give you a hint. It has to do with planting. Yes, planting trees is by far the cheapest way to mitigate CO2 in the atmosphere. More on geoengineering later. Popular science. If we all stopped eating beef, what would happen to the land? Now, this is part of a huge debate that is now raging around the beef issue. The question that Popular Science poses is, does #NoRedOctober make sense? Well, they say, and I quote, take, for example, the statistic that it takes 11 times more water to raise cattle than to raise pork or chicken. That number doesn't take into consideration what kind of water is being used. It makes a huge difference if the water is irrigated water, pulled up from groundwater supplies, or if it's just rainwater that would naturally occur on grasslands anyway. Just like water isn't the same, land varies too. So the article goes on to really talk about the differences of how the cattle are raised, right? Of course, they go back to what we're all going back to in this conversation, soil. They say, the reason is simple. Healthy soil is both a sign of sustainable practices and a contributor to the healthy food system. Healthy soils require fewer synthetic fertilizers, for example, and it's these synthetic fertilizers that contribute so greatly to the annual dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. They go on to talk about soil, and they're very positive about soil, as anyone who studies the science is. Now, what they do say is, this does nothing, of course, to answer the question of whether or not you should eat less beef. But maybe, just maybe, that's the wrong question. Perhaps the better question to ask is, do you know the source of your food? And let everything else fall from there. And I end quote. That's from Popular Science, ladies and gentlemen. Popular Science is writing about this. This is the subject of Kiss the Ground, the book that's coming out this week. It's out right now. You can order your copy, which brings me to our first reviews. not all positive, okay? This is from Kirkus Reviews. They say the author too often preaches to the choir. The science at the center of his thesis is lacking. Tickell argues that the reason these farming techniques will transform agriculture is because they foster the health of the billions of microbes and fungi that live in the soil. But he only rarely mentions the name of a single species. Whoa, big criticism. And it's not true. If you read the book, around page 135, I spend 5 pages, yes, 1,000 words, just talking about one species of fungus, mycorrhizal fungi, okay? You'd have to read the book to find this out, and I'm questioning whether or not the reviewer actually read the book, because they go on to say, furthermore, it takes more than 2/3 of the text for the author to note that the soil microorganisms thrive when suspended in water and go dormant without it, a premise central to his thesis. Well, let me ask you a question. How many people listening right now or watching actually care whether or not microorganisms live in water or not? My guess is a few of you, because you're soil geeks like me, but most of you don't care. And the reason you don't care is because that has no context, okay? So what the book does do, which the reviewer failed to see, is on page 6, 19, 136, 139, 140, 141, and 218, we build an understanding of soil microbes so that when we do reveal that microbes need water, it actually makes sense, okay? The last critique is that the book only takes place in France and the United States. Really? That's all you got? That's your critique? 2 countries? Does not a book make, especially the largest agricultural producer in the world and the country that really invented cuisine? Why would you go to those countries? Why not somewhere else? Please read the book before you review it. Publishers Weekly has a similar problem with their reviewer. They say, on regenerative agriculture, the suite of farming reforms that aim to restore soil health through no-till agriculture, crop rotation, fertilization, with compost, manure, and free-range livestock grazing, in his messianic telling, as if I am a messiah versus a reporter, this program will halt erosion, feed a swelling population, save farmers from bankruptcy, summon rain, and sequester enough carbon underground to reverse global warming. That's because, dear Publishers Weekly, it can and it will. The alternative is a global farming apocalypse. Consider this, Publishers Weekly writer, who failed to put their name on the review. Consider, we've lost 33% of our arable land since 1980. 33%, 1/3 of our arable land globally, but we've added billions of human beings. If this trend continues, we will lose 66% of our arable land and be at 10 billion humans by 2050. What do you propose as the alternative? Honestly, what is the alternative? I can go on. I'll do one more just from Publishers Weekly because it's so rich, the criticism. It also feels like a one-sided treatment drawn from the most optimistic reaches of scientific literature. They obviously didn't read the end notes, of which there are 1,000 words of resources, references, and studies stretching back to the 1930s, citing people like Harvard's Medical School of Public Health, not generally known as an over-optimistic organization. We also have a number of doctors and PhD scientists that have spent their entire careers, 30 or 40 years, studying these issues, interviewed extensively in the book. So my feeling is that these reviews are not accurate. In fact, I wonder who really paid for them. Was it the reviewers themselves, or was it something else? Perhaps a chemical company, a conglomerate, an agricultural conglomerate? I'd be interested to know your thoughts, Facebook viewers and iTunes listeners. Who do you think pays for these reviews? And if you are a reviewer and you're not able to read the book, I highly recommend you listen to the audiobook. You're less likely to skip the entire book and look for problems. Thank you for the reviews. Hope they keep coming in and hope they get positive. But even if they don't, you can bet we'll get you the truth right here. I want to introduce you all to a very special guest this week, somebody who is really had an incredible life journey. She is a rare human being who has really pulled herself up from her bootstraps, a kind of a rags to riches story. And everybody who watches my films, especially Good Fortune, which I co-directed with my wife, Rebecca Harrell Tickell, you know that I love rags to riches stories. But this woman is something else. She started a well-known tea company. You've probably had her teas, Zhena's Gypsy Teas. And now she is in the publishing world. It's very rare for an author to interview their publisher, but it's very rare for a publisher to be as amazing a human being, and I'm giving you props because you deserve them, as you, Zhena. Zhena, thank you for being on the show. So excited to have you today.
I'm honored.
I think a lot of people, they know your tea. They've seen
I brought a
Zhena's Gypsy Teas. You see it in your Whole Foods. Now you see it in grocery stores,
yeah,
actually. Zhena's Gypsy Teas here, right?
At one point, it was in 22,000 stores. I'm not sure. We got fair trade into Walmart, Kroger, Super Value, and it was really more than just the fair trade. It was the soil.
It was the soil. So here you are. At this point, when you started Zhena's Gypsy Teas, were you a mom already?
Yes.
You were.
I had a son, my baby boy, and he needed some life-saving operations. And at the time, I was living a little hippie girl, living as a writer on a creative writing grant in Matilaha Canyon here in Ojai. And I needed to go get him these operations, and I took him to the hospital. They said, you don't have the right insurance. I went to go get the right insurance. In the meantime, in a total panic, I'm 25 years old, just turned 25. And then I went to the insurance companies. They said, oh, we're sorry. Birth defects are pre-existing conditions. We don't cover pre-existing conditions. So I was able to find a program called Healthy Families here in the state of California, which George Bush canceled. And I was able to save my son's life. And what happened was my hobby had been tea. I had grown herbs in my yard, and my grandmother from the Ukraine had taught me how to garden and grow my food and grow everything. And so I started thinking, oh, I could put together these herbs that I grow, and I needed something to sell, and that was all I had. So I started putting together my blends and selling them. And the first, I put a gypsy tea party together. She was gypsy, so I wanted to honor our heritage. And 300 people came out here in Ojai, California. Gunnar was there from Thrive Market, and a bunch of amazing, his mom from Love Heals, and a bunch of amazing locals came to support me. I sold $1,000 worth of tea. I was in business. I was able to build a multi-million-dollar business. And
wow.
Yeah, and it was really, and Sage is now almost 18, and he's, as you know, a photographer and healthy and beautiful, and so it's a good story.
Well, it's an amazing life path that you've lived. You were 25 years old.
Just turned. Sage was born the day after my 25th birthday, so
that's a big birthday gift.
Yeah, he's the best gift ever.
Yeah, so incredible. You decide to really, you didn't go the corporate route per se. You didn't put on a pantsuit and go to New York City right away.
Right away.
You embraced kind of the gypsy hippie thing in a way,
it's
right?
really all I had. And it was authentic.
Right.
I mean, I'd spent 4 years writing a book about my gypsy grandmother, and I didn't have a publisher. It wasn't done yet, but I knew how to hustle. And I really, it was for my kid, as you know, as a dad.
Yeah, you'll do anything. Look, when your back is against the wall and your child needs something, that's it. And that is really, those are some of our greatest moments of growth as parents.
Absolutely. He made me a mom he could count on.
Wow.
Definitely.
Wow.
And that's why I'm so passionate about the environment and so passionate about Kiss the Ground, because global warming and climate change I have felt a sense of urgency about it since I was a little girl growing up in Idaho and seeing them clear cutting the forests. And my dad's a U.S. Forest Service firefighter. And he would take me out on these fire roads, and I could see what was happening. And I have felt that this is our key issue and is going to be everything. So when I read the book and I saw the early cut of the film, I just thought, oh my God, how can we not get this out into everyone's hands? And soil is life, and without it, there's no life.
It is that simple. And you are the rare, and I want to talk about your whole career. I want to get into the publishing, because I think that a lot of moms, they get to a point where they've got a child or two childs, and they have the aspiration, the dream, the degree, the job, the career, and it just kind of evaporates.
Yeah.
But you have balanced both. Not only have you balanced both, you're still a warrior. You're a warrior for the environment.
Born that way.
Right? You're a warrior for the environment. You're a warrior for good. And so many different levels. And I want to get your whole life path into this. But I want to take a step back and go back to those gypsy teas that you were growing in your yard. You went from growing tea in your backyard to a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Now, take us back. What year was this? What was the I don't mean to beguile your age.
It's fine. It's fine. No, I don't care about any of that. I'm as your publisher, I'm like, all right, everyone,
let's
you need
talk
to buy
about
the book.
You should buy Kiss the Ground, the book this week.
And so I'll give you my story as long as we focus on.
We'll put the book right there, front and center for iTunes listeners. The book is on the table.
It is beautiful.
It's ready to rock.
We love this cover.
Yeah.
We love this book.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So
what was the time period? Was organic big? Was fair trade big?
Okay, so
what were your challenges?
Organic was considered a trend.
Yes.
My investor at the time in the tea company thought it was too expensive and ridiculous.
Didn't want to go organic.
Didn't want to go organic.
So the money doesn't want to go organic.
The money didn't want to go organic. I was able to buy the money out miraculously.
Okay.
The basis of all of this is with a mission to serve, you cannot fail. And when you know the truth and you're on the right track, miracles happen.
Yes.
And what happened for me was I discovered that the tea workers in the tea fields had very high infant mortality rates with their children. The minute I heard about this, I thought, oh my God, this is what I just went through with Sage. That's why God put me in this path to discover these tragedies that are happening. Everyone 9,000 miles away, we're drinking tea, thinking we're doing something great for our health. What I didn't realize is that they spray the crap out of the tea.
Spray chemicals. So
Roundup,
glyphosate, Roundup 2,4-D, this type of stuff. Okay.
Exactly. Everything that you write about in the book.
And these workers are primarily
exposed to all of it.
Okay. Are they female or male or mixed?
They're almost 100% female.
So it's a female workforce. They're moms.
There were no toilets.
Wow.
There were no toilets. There was no access to healthcare whatsoever. They make $1 a day. They had to pluck 16 kilograms a day of tea leaves. That's 2,000 plucks a kilogram. Do the math.
I mean, I can't even fathom what my fingers would be like.
Every day for 40 years, exposed to chemicals.
Wow.
I got out to the tea fields in India and Sri Lanka, and what I saw was harrowing. It was basically they had started using chemicals between 5 and 20 years back, right? In most of the gardens. And
so in the 80s, it really came on strong.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yep.
And so what I noticed was the soil under the tea plants was hard as rock.
Like dry and hard.
Impervious
and
to
white.
Rain.
Ooh, white. So
like
salinity.
I have pictures.
So that's the salinity.
Yes.
That's salt coming up in the soil.
What was happening?
Very bad sign.
Exactly. So
very bad.
The worker health was eroded. The soil was eroded.
Yes.
And what I noticed is when it would rain, the water would run off.
Right.
And it would not soak in.
Just like
their inputs,
just like here we are in Central California, Southern California, same issue.
Their inputs were going up and up and up. They were having to use more and more chemical fertilizers, which were then going into the water streams. And the women were exposed to these chemicals. So I found this garden called Adogasina in Sri Lanka. And the owners knew that they had to prove that you could go organic and fair trade, treat the workers well, and make it work financially. And they invested everything they had into it. I discovered them and I said, oh my God, this is heaven on earth. The workers were flocking there because they didn't want to be exposed to chemicals.
Who does?
Their infant mortality rates were almost the same as America because they had preventative health care and they weren't exposed to the chemicals.
Right.
And the soil was so alive. It wasn't just organic, it was biodynamic. The first biodynamic. And so they were feeding the soil.
Right.
And treating it as if it were an entity that sustained life, because it does. Yeah. And I saw microclimate, I saw everything. And so what ended up happening...
So you saw this firsthand, and this was in the 90s, correct?
This was in 2001.
2000, okay, so just after the turn.
Yeah.
In 2001, you're seeing this firsthand.
Yes.
You've now experience the difference
Yes.
and the desolation
Yes.
that this chemical industrial agriculture
Absolutely.
is causing
Absolutely.
for us Americans
Well, and
to
I grew
have
up in Lompoc,
our luxurious
absolutely.
teas.
Well,
Crazy.
after we moved back to California from Idaho, I grew up in a place called Lompoc where I remember seeing planes spraying, and it would hit. I mean, from the schoolyard, I felt it land on our skin. And there are
big military base up there.
Well, not
actually.
only that, but
Yeah.
the agriculture is
Yes.
very big,
Yeah.
and the spraying was really big, and the cancer rates are very high. And ever since I was little, I saw the connection. I thought, oh, they're spraying stuff that's meant to kill things. Why isn't it killing us?
Yeah. Bad idea, folks, to spray that on your children.
Yes.
Yes. Turns out we still are.
Exactly. I know. I saw
Yeah.
Rebecca's report a couple weeks ago, but one of the things that I discovered about success is that good soil makes good profits. The soil is alive, and it infused my teas tasted richer and fuller and more alive and vibrant than other teas. And still to this day, I don't run the company anymore. But the supply, well, and the tea workers ended up throwing my wedding for me and all that. Like there was all sorts of magic, but that's in my book.
That's
by
in
the
your
cup.
book.
Yes.
Which the name of
Life by the Cup.
You threw it down. Let's have a look at this.
We're focused on.
Look, our listeners, our viewers, you are readers. You are the next generation that's going to change the world. So
absolutely,
if you're going to read, another book, you need to read Zhena's book, which is called Life by the Cup.
It's a great book.
Inspiration for a purpose-filled life. Look at that. Beautiful cover. Good picture of Zhena on the back there. So get this book.
Thank you.
Read this book. This because you are an inspiration. You really are. This is an incredible story. So you go to India, you go to Sri Lanka, you see the devastation, you find a beautiful farm that's doing things right.
Absolutely.
Biodynamic,
Fair
feeding
trade
the
certified.
soil.
And
you come back armed with this new information. I'm sure you took pictures back. You had a PowerPoint presentation or something. Okay.
I went straight to Kroger.
You go to the investors who are mostly probably...
Well, at this point, I had two excellent investors.
Okay, good.
Andrea and Dirakshan, and they believed in organic. They knew it. They were conscious.
Great.
So they were great with it. But more than that, what was so exciting was all of a sudden, all I had to do was show buyers at grocery chains and restaurants and the differences and educate them on the garden and fair trade and biodynamic and organic. And they were like, oh my God, how much shelf space do you want? Everyone just got it.
Wow.
And so I realized with the mission to serve, you cannot fail. And because it's the truth and it's going to sustain the world and it's not exposing us to chemicals, they were like, yeah, this is great. So we were up against Tetley and all the big companies, and we were getting shelf space for free, whereas other companies had to buy shelf space. And it was that passion and that excitement that they had of belonging to a mission. And so that is what made us successful. That's why we grew Supernova. It wasn't because, and obviously the tea tastes great and the packaging's fun, but it really was the mission. That's what sold the tea.
And so here it is, early 2000s, your company's taking off. You see the power of the message to move the market.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, we got to go back.
Sambazan,
yeah, we got to go back
Guayaki.
in time. Think about 17 years ago. People don't realize because it's,
We didn't have certified organic when I started.
We didn't even have a
the
label.
We didn't have the USDA label.
Right.
We didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
People were saying their stuff was organic, and we would reverse engineer it, send it to a lab, our competitors, and it was full of chemicals.
So
but
people,
there was no regulation. And listen, I don't like big government either, but I absolutely believe you have to regulate business because greed is real. And people will...
Well, and some would say, some of our current politicians might even say, greed is good. They would go beyond saying real. This is kind of the motto of modern business that kind of infected the business world in the 1970s.
Which is what's destroying the planet.
Yeah,
which is what's raping and pillaging all of our resources and using it up so that our kids... are going to have a mess to clean up.
But look at the reversal in consciousness, really. And this is something that you've been on the forefront of it. You saw it happening in the early 2000s. we now have 80 to 90% of Americans will buy some form of organic, USDA certified organic foods this year. Many of them purchasing at Costco, which is the largest provider of organic foods.
Amazing.
Supermarkets. All of this has now happened.
Yep.
Just like we went from solar panels never being a possibility to Solar City is literally installing them as fast as they can.
It's so exciting.
Electric cars were never going to be a possibility. Now they're happening.
We're waking up.
Right. So, but that process, you encountered challenges even after the company succeeded, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And tell me about that, because you don't have to get specific. You don't have to name people, but I think it's important for folks to know that failure is something that can be embraced.
Oh, absolutely.
It can make you stronger.
Absolutely.
And people who are listening to, this season, this season of these podcasts, these shows, it's all about the connection between climate, food, and your health.
Absolutely.
And there are, moms see this issue and they go, "Oh, it's too challenging. I can't do it.
You can, Mama.
I can't deal with my park. I can't deal with my schoolyard that's spraying. I can't deal with my school lunches." People see this as an insurmountable wall. And you've gone on that journey. You've had failures.
People saw Harvey Weinstein as an insurmountable wall. People saw Kevin Spacey as a powerhouse. We can break down these walls. We have the power. We just haven't had the empowerment. So we must give ourselves permission. If somebody hasn't given you permission to do it, give it to yourself. Because the only thing that's going to happen in 10 years is we're either going to survive this and dodge this bullet, or we're not.
Yeah.
So who are we going to be in 10 years? I see us waking up en masse, one person at a time, doing what's right, ending Roundup's use in gallons. I mean, God, I sent you that picture from Lowe's.
Yes.
It is just being sold in.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like so cute. And now Monsanto's rebranding.
Yes.
They're all rebranded and
course.
greenwashing and this and that.
Yeah.
And trust me, I get it. I understand their point of view, but that doesn't mean it's right. I get that their point of view is we've got to do this. We believe in it. It's everything, but they're wrong. And it's okay to be wrong. I've been wrong a million times. And it's time for us to work together and save the planet, because we're in that place. I think the last time I heard we have 3 to 4 years to save the plankton, that's 80% of our oxygen, up to 90% of our oxygen. We're done. So what are we going to do? Go to Mars? It's inhabitable, because we live on the most beautiful planet that was ever created, and we can't take care of it. Shame on us. So yes, take action immediately. Do whatever's in front of you.
So how have you dealt with failure in your career? Because your career was as much a mission as it is a career.
It's always a mission.
Right?
It's always a mission.
And you've had big setbacks, just like all of us, I have had.
Yeah, I got fired from the tea company.
So you got fired from your own tea company.
Well, 2008 happened. I had to raise a lot of money under duress. Yeah. Everybody was. It's a miracle. I wrote about this in my book, Life by the Cup as well.
Life by the Cup. Again, ladies and gentlemen.
Stop it.
Another great book. We have 2 great books for you today.
No, Kiss the Ground is the focus.
And Life by the Cup, right there. Look at that.
I'm just, so that I don't take too much airwaves talking about my book, I'm just referring them to it if they want to know more.
I think people should buy both. But what's wrong with reading
more?
Well,
my God, my book's so cheap right now, too. It's paperback. So anyway.
What a deal.
So check this out.
Yeah.
So 2008 happens. We were in a whole load of trouble. I mean, we had done a deal with Whole Foods, and Whole Foods was having problems too.
The world, the financial markets of the world
and we
bottomed
had,
out.
Yeah, and we bought futures of some teas that were very rare.
So you're
special line.
You're buying futures of teas.
You have to,
based on being able to give them production into the future.
Yes, so because it grows out of the ground.
So it doesn't. It's not a goo. You don't just shove it into a bottle.
No,
you actually have to grow it.
It's really refined. It's really precious. It's biodynamic, so there's not a lot of growers. And so what ended up happening was we got our first humongous initial order, and then the world ended and distributors stopped buying. There were a few months where we didn't get any orders.
Just zeros, balance sheet.
I mean,
boom,
it was
boom, boom, boom.
I mean, people
That's
were
scary.
Yes,
That's
it was
very scary.
People were so scared that the economy was collapsing.
Right.
We all know what happened, right?
Yes. Yep.
So that happened. It was a miracle I found some investors to invest and save the company. So I absolutely love and respect them for that.
Yeah.
I offered them a chance to make a difference in the world. And so, after a couple of years, we weren't getting along. And so I was asked to leave.
Asked to leave your own company. I've had a similar experience. So
It happens. It happens a lot.
now, because the subject of the show is really about changing the world.
Yes.
We
Yes.
I want you to buy Kiss the Ground, the book, ladies and gentlemen. Now is the week that kissthegroundbook.com. This is the week to get it. But
It's worth every penny.
there you go.
It is.
From Zhena, who knows these failures. How did you deal with that in terms of the bigger mission? We're tapping into.
I only cared that they remained fair trade and organic. My ego in having a title or being the face of a brand or whatever, really, you definitely take it in the shorts, for losing your chance to lead something. But I also was no longer inspired by dealing with grocery stores, fending off Republic of Tea and all these other competitors that were just nasty. And I was like, this is like the worst of human nature. I'm in this for the poetry and the best of human nature and the mission. So at a certain point, it became, dogmatic that I was like shuffling paperwork and fighting for shelf space and all of that. So my heart was kind of gone too. I wanted to educate people on organic and fair trade. I wanted everybody. And then all of a sudden, everybody was on the bandwagon. I mean, we were the first 100% organic fair trade tea company in the United States.
First 100%
absolutely
organic
the first
fair trade tea company
Nobody
in the
else,
U.S.
Yeah, like after we took the plunge, like I was talking to all these bigger companies that were bigger than me going, you got to go organic, you got to go fair trade. Come on, Honest Tea. Like I was.
Yeah, be honest.
Yeah, I was.
Right?
I was just fearless because it really was that. Right. And also my son had many operations and was healed. And so the impetus was, my son was saved. That was the initial idea for starting a business. And then fair trade and organic was on its way.
So in a way, you had accomplished your mission.
Yes, absolutely.
You had completed that part of your journey.
And I honored my grandmother and our gypsy heritage, which she had been put in a concentration camp for. And all of a sudden, millions of people are buying gypsy tea across America, which she had been shamed for and spent 5 years in a concentration camp for. So I was able to give her that dignity posthumously as well. So it was pretty awesome. I'm really proud of it.
I think it's amazing. So you completed that piece of your journey. And is Muzyka, is that your grandmother's last name?
Yes.
And so where is that name from? Muzyka.
Yeah,
it's an amazing.
It's Ukrainian.
It's a cool
Ukrainian
name, like Muzyka.
Yeah, it is music.
So rebounding from that.
It's amazing.
Growth.
Yes. So
what's your advice to people who have been on a mission-driven journey? It's completed, it's failed, it's somewhere in between, but it's time to acknowledge that they need to move on. Well, how do you deal with the rebound?
It's just like soil. So you're given a plot of land that has, barren soil, you start rebuilding. And basically I looked at where are my roots? My roots are I moved to Ojai to write. I moved to Ojai. Books are my first love because they are able to educate and uplift and change minds and infuse minds. And so I thought, well, my first love is writing. So I'm going to write. I wrote my book, Life by the Cup. And what ended up happening was I was going to self-publish it because and this was before I left the company, but I was like, oh, I can self-publish this because I have 22,000 stores carrying my product. I bet I could get people to carry it.
Yeah.
And so I then, synchronicity would have it, or the universe would have it. I met this amazing woman named Jan, and she said, I know an editor, Leslie Meredith, at a place called Atria, and I think she's going to love you and this book, and I don't think you should self-publish. I think you should send it to her. And she and I just reconnected yesterday. We're going to talk after this, which is very exciting. She is an unbelievable editor. But what ended up happening was I fell in love with her, and then Judith Kerr, the head of Atria, I really fell in love with her as well, and I started bringing... They signed me, and I started bringing them other authors and getting more and more excited. And I had a really innovative marketing campaign for the book. And I asked Judith, I basically was having a cocktail with her. And I said, I just need you to know the tea company fired me recently. And if you want to cancel my book, I understand. And she said, oh, this is fabulous news. I've been wanting to bring you on.
She does have that beautiful Australian,
amazing. She's, I call her my queen.
Accent, right?
Absolutely. She's absolutely luminary. I mean, she understands publishing. She understands spirit. She takes risks. She's so visionary. She's impeccable. And anyway, you can tell I love her. So I've been a publisher there for going on 4 years.
So you went from starting a tea company, you started a multi-million-dollar tea company, successfully grew it, safeguarded it into the future, got fired from it, came back to writing, got your book out into the world, became a publisher. You are now a publisher. Enliven.
Yeah, is your imprint. I'm your publisher.
You are my publisher.
Pretty rad.
Which is wonderful for me, but it's wonderful for the world too. You and I love books.
Yes, we do. You are such a fantastic writer.
Oh my gosh. Josh, all the money I paid you is
I cannot.
Working.
I have told people when I was presenting your book initially to everyone in-house, I was like, I can't believe I can't put this down, and the whole 300-something pages is about dirt. Like
it is the most interesting book you'll ever read about dirt, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm not kidding. It has intrigue. It's very 007. Yeah. It's got all sorts of great reporting. It's fascinating. There were things that grossed me out about it too, about like potentially composting humans. I was like, oh my God, I draw the line. But hey, understanding grass.
You're not doing anything with your body when you're done with it.
No kidding. But yeah, it's kind of weird. But the whole like grass-fed beef versus regular beef, like I didn't understand all of the animal because I was vegan for 13 years. So I didn't
me for 6 years as well.
So I didn't understand the meat thing. Right. I just knew it was bad.
Right.
But now I understand we have local ranchers who raise cattle, out in the open. And that's actually, now I know that re-infuses the soil with microorganisms, and buffaloes were the reason we have our topsoil in America. Like I learned so much. I feel so honored to be your publisher, but also I just am so passionate about this project because it is true. I can feel it the way I felt the tea and fair trade. I can feel it the way, it feels right. And the nonprofit and everything they're doing over there in Ryland and then all the supporters, Dr. Bronner's and Annie's and Nativa and Thrive Market, like everybody's jumping on exactly the way it was in the beginning of organic. This is the feeling. I have not had this feeling in 17 years.
Wow.
This is that feeling again. You can feel the groundswell, and you can
feel the earth move.
Well, and you can feel the people, the excitement and the collaboration and everybody jumping in to help. It was like, Kroger was the first, they were the first to jump on and help me. And it was Dan Sims out at King Super in Colorado. He brought me in to talk to their management team. And that was my first photo. Like I showed them the fair trade, non-fair trade, organic, non-fair organic. And they were like, holy cow, we're in. And, and back then Wild Oats, I mean, all those guys, they jumped on the way people are jumping on with Kiss the Ground.
Well, I believe that consciousness is infectious.
And addictive.
And addictive, right? But certainly you've got to recognize that we all want to be healthy.
And we all want to live.
And especially our children. This is the greatest investment that you will make in your life is into your children. There is so much negative news, really, and so much.
You cannot subscribe to the vibration of that density. you have to focus on subscribing to what is possible and solutions based. I mean, Tony Robbins talks about
for
that.
those of you who are not from California, what she just said, let me translate it. Don't read the bad news, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, read
Come
it,
over to the
but
good side.
buy into what's possible.
Right. And this is really the big deal, I think. And this is why you and I feel like we've got a connection that is literary. We understand things from a literary perspective, and we love the written word and the power of the written word. But I also feel like we have a vibrational connection in that there are people, because we live in a cynical time, who will always take the cynical approach. And I don't mean...
Welcome to my childhood.
Right.
My dad with the U.S. Forest Service loves nature more than anyone, but so cynical. So, and what is possible, we have to actually, we can't tell them. We have to show them by example. That's how we're going to make change. So
that's why we put pictures in the book, by the way.
Yes.
Pictures.
Great. Lots of charts. No, I mean,
let's show, just in case you're not reading.
Yeah,
in case
but
you're
visual.
only looking at the book.
Well, and also the visual. But, when Life by the Cup came out, I was amazed. I had most of my press was through different Fox News shows. I was on Lou Dobbs. And it was because it had a positive message of fair trade. And business.
Well, you are a businesswoman.
Exactly.
And a very successful one.
Well, thank you. But Kiss the Ground, too. It makes business sense.
Mm-hmm. It does.
How do you keep growing stuff out of dead soil? You don't. You can't. It's impossible.
Right. And that's I think that's one of the big moments when, I breathed a sigh of relief when you decided, okay, we're going to publish this book, come, hell or high water, was the stakes are so high.
The stakes are so
high. And you
high.
don't have to... If you literally do not think that human beings are altering the climate of Earth...
Well, guess what just happened? Trump's administration just admitted it 2 days ago.
Well, there you go.
I mean, I saw that, and I almost passed out.
I'm sure the president, maybe the president almost passed out too.
I mean, I almost fainted. I just thought, oh my God, now, okay, if they're admitting it.
Right. Well.
Now we're really screwed.
Right. Look.
I'm kidding, because it's that real.
Well, anthropogenic climate alteration will be argued forever. Okay. Yeah. What is unarguable, and this is why I poured so much of my life into this book, why Rebecca, my family, our whole community has rallied for this. And it's really why the nonprofit Kiss the Ground that inspired the book, again, this is a nonprofit, a book and a movie soon, but really it's a movement. Why all of this is so important. This cuts across every cultural barrier,
absolutely,
every income barrier. Bottom line, we are blowing through topsoil like cotton candy at the state fair.
Totally.
And if you graph that curve, it goes straight down. I was just in Elk City, Oklahoma 2 weeks ago at a soil course. And what I learned is so amazing. The topsoil, the top layer of topsoil, for 1 ton of topsoil, the thickness of that 1 ton of topsoil on top of 1 acre, it is the thickness of a sheet of paper for 1 ton of topsoil. So when the wind blows and you don't have a cover crop, that soil blows away. You're literally losing tons of topsoil.
And money.
And so, soil is money. And that's the
what
angle.
People have to,
that's what
how
Lou
we
Dobbs,
take this
Lou
mainstream.
Dobbs,
This is a mainstream
we're inviting you.
message.
We're inviting
Absolutely.
you.
He's wonderful. He was wonderful to me.
Yeah, here we go.
Absolutely.
Soil is money.
It makes absolute business sense. I think Trump would really embrace this. I mean, I don't know if he's sane, but if he understands business, which I believe he does, if he's still the president by the time,
By the time the book comes out. Oh, it's out already. Never mind.
But what I find that, when I talk to my dad about why did you vote for Trump, and I'm canceling Thanksgiving, that was last year. But this year we're going to have Thanksgiving together. I've made
Might as well.
Exactly. But what ended up happening, he said, this is strictly economic.
Yeah. Can I recommend a free range turkey?
Yeah. Well, no, we do. We definitely get heirloom wild turkeys. But one of the things that, he said this is just economics. he said, as a middle class man who has worked his ass off his whole life, like this is economics. This is economics, food and finance and soil, that you can't get more basic than this.
Yeah.
My grandma growing up from the Ukraine, we had a city block. My grandpa bought this lot and built a house on it, and the entire thing was planted. I mean, we had the family orchard. We grew grapes, and she made wine. We grew blackberries on the back fence, and she made blackberry jam and wine. We grew citrus. We grew all the vegetables. We grew cucumbers. Like, we ate off of our land. I grew up that way, and she fed everybody. I mean, the only thing, she didn't grow wheat, but she had rows of corn. She fed everybody in her church. And it was like, it wasn't even an acre. And she didn't use chemicals on that.
Right.
And she composted everything, every scrap, she made potatoes all the time. And every potato skin, everything went right back into the soil.
It's valuable carbon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it turns back into soil.
So for me, I'm just like, yeah, because I've had a connection to it. And I think that's what we get a chance to bring people back into now, is their connection to the soil and to the land and to their food. Because more and more being, culinary, understanding food and enjoying it, I can't imagine anything more fun on the planet than eating with friends, eating with family, feeding your children. Like, that's actually, it's kind of everything.
Well, if you go onto Instagram, it really is everything.
Yes, it is.
the pictures of food that have inundated our world.
Food is fun.
Food is central.
Beautiful.
And what's interesting is it's very central to the millennial generation.
Absolutely.
Food
because
has become
smart.
this issue, right? Right.
Because they're smart and they care.
It's become a big issue.
Absolutely. We need millennials, and we're publishing the millennial book next year too, which I'm so excited about. But millennials get it. Millennials are smart. They're intuitive. I can't tell you. I mean, my assistant Sam is millennial, and she gets it. And my son, I'm raising him. Well, he's Gen Z, I think, but on the cusp. And they are so wise, and we need them farming.
Yeah.
We need them farming.
And I think that we are in a period of time where we're going to see this food fascination, this millennial food fixation, the Instagram. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm having a cup of soup. I'm having a cup of tea. I'm having, I've got to take 6 pictures of it. And here's what I look like in my workout clothes, by the way.
Yeah.
But there is, it's funny when you go back in time, you look at 1950s, 1960s parenting.
Yeah.
There was this huge realization that occurred during that period of time that parents could actually have an impact on a child based on how they raised them. That was like a realization. There were many books, millions of copies sold.
I wasn't
Spock,
alive
right?
during that time, so I don't know.
But you've probably seen the Dr. Spock. That whole revolution in thinking was, well, if we raise them differently, they'll turn out differently.
Well, the book I found in my mom's room as a kid was Raising the Strong-Willed Child or something. And I thought, what's strong-willed?
That is a rhetorical question sitting here, isn't it? But we both have strong-willed children.
Absolutely.
So what comes around goes around. But what's fascinating is I believe the millennial generation is going to make a similar realization
with food.
Which
is medicine.
Food is medicine. What you put in your body is ultimately how your body runs.
It predicts everything.
Right?
I mean, you are what you eat. That's such a cliche thing to say, but what else are you?
Right. Well, and if we look at the typical American diet, standard American diet, the SAD, 63% of our calories are from processed foods from a box, bag, carton, or tube. And
but
I had to add tube because that's the new thing.
It wasn't even like that, though. Like growing up it wasn't like that before. I mean, we didn't process things the way we do now for shelf stable, and I didn't realize why we do it so much until I read your book. And, and I just want to say for the listeners too, like I didn't even really have to edit much. It was that thorough, and that, I mean,
About 40,000 words.
well, but I made
chapter.
you. Well, yeah,
It was too long. It was way
yes,
too long.
I had you cut a little,
but you can get that chapter for free. And
oh, good! What a
yeah.
smart idea.
Yeah, you'll be able to get
from
that
the cutting room floor.
from the cutting room floor. Yeah,
Great.
kissthegroundbook.com/free is where all the free stuff is.
All the free stuff I made you cut, which was great. But
look,
but what I
got to
find,
fit it in there, right?
Yes, but what I find fascinating is that it's because of the industrialization of our farmlands, where they're making growing soy, corn, and wheat in such vast quantity. They have such a surplus. Here it is again. It's business. They have such a surplus. They got to feed us that in every single salty, crunchy, sweet form.
Yeah.
To get rid of it.
Yeah.
We are their trash cans.
We're the guinea
and we're
pigs.
paying for it.
We're the guinea pigs.
Absolutely.
We're really, if you look at generationally, I was born in 1975. I'm Generation X.
Me too.
We are the first
Absolutely.
generation. We're the first guinea pigs raised in a completely industrialized food system.
Absolutely. GMOs. I mean, we have no idea what the long-term effects of any of this
Right. We
is.
have some, and boy, have I gotten flack for the 200 peer-reviewed studies that I point to in the book around chemical exposure, which is,
well,
always,
chemical exposure is obvious.
Right. But the GMOs require the chemicals.
Exactly.
And that's the part that people miss.
Exactly.
It's not about the alteration genetically, because that will take 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years to play out.
But to make them, to genetically modify them to actually have to be grown and used with these chemicals.
Roundup ready.
And the Roundup, 3 pounds per American per year.
Per year.
And it's got
all
a
chemicals.
half-life of a gazillion years. I mean, you look at the buildup of that in our systems, it's horrifying.
Well, we still have, what's amazing is if you blood sample Americans today, most of us still have DDT in our bloodstream.
Well, they were still using that in the tea fields when I got out there.
But that was technically not to be used in the United States after 1980. So here we are, you and I, born in the 70s, we've got DDT in our blood.
Totally.
We are experimenting.
Totally.
On a global scale with our genetics, because we now understand much more about epigenetics than we did in the 1970s. And we know that epigenetic traits turn on and off.
Yep.
And all of the scientists that I've interviewed who are geneticists, who specialize in epigenetics, say the rise in cancer that we're seeing in the United States is impossible as a genetic trait. It must be environmental factors. The number one factor is what we eat.
Duh.
It's what we eat. Yeah. And weird thing about epigenetics that I learned recently, it's transgenerational. So what I didn't understand, but I've had PhD level, multi-peer reviewed scientists explaining to me, epigenetics, once that gene is turned on or off, it can be passed on to the next generation. That's the scary
memory.
part.
I mean,
that's the scary part.
I came into the world wondering, as a kid, I got an eating disorder really early. I did not know what it was. I couldn't, and at 20, I went to EMDR and had this therapy, and the EMDR therapist was also a spiritual, guide, and she basically said, your grandparents were in concentration camps and went through Stalin's forced famines. You have, your relationship to food, because I couldn't control it. I was super smart. I was on fire, a straight A student, everything. I'm like, what is this issue with food? And she said, it is imprinted in our cells. You come from people, we have the cellular structure of our traumas. And so I absolutely believe that. And, what are we doing right now? I mean, what are we passing on?
So, and that is the big question. And part of the reason why those of us who live in Ojai, this little intentional community, sequestered
Which
away.
needs to get organic entirely.
And funny enough, we are really in the middle of a chemical war zone.
Absolutely.
It is every field,
We're
every
only 5% organic.
Yeah.
This conscious community of 8,000, 25,000 in the valley, conscious as you can get, we're 5% organic. It is unbelievable.
Not to dissuade the tourism dollars that are being spent to get you to come
well,
to Ojai and visit. And
they're not spraying the oranges on your head,
Right.
but the oranges are in one part of the town.
Yes.
And I've had countless friends get cancer who live over there.
Look, it's you can
pretty
smell
obvious.
it. You can literally drive to the east end of Ojai to the fields.
Yeah.
And you can
And
spend
when
time there,
those-
and you smell the concentration is
It's so strong.
Toxicologists will tell us
Yep.
that when the concentration in the air is high enough to smell, you are being,
Poisoned.
Basically.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So here we are in the conscious community of Ojai.
And even we have work to do.
Yeah, in the foothills of Los Padres National Forest, beautiful place to raise your
It is
kids.
beautiful.
And we are really at ground zero of what will hopefully become a revolution, but it's not yet.
We're at the turning point right now. I think the consciousness, like with books like this, and there have been other books and other films coming out. I mean, look at Leo DiCaprio, look at all these people out there educating masses. People are waking up to it.
Yeah.
People are understanding, like, oh, I mean, I was just listening to a thing about what's happening in China, and they are absolutely going electric everything. Like, they are going to be the leaders. They are all focused on, no gas powered anything anymore. Like, that's waking up. If that's not waking up, I don't know what is. So
Yeah,
I
China-
do feel good
China's-
about things.
China has the potential. And this is, I had an interesting conversation the other night with one of our neighbors. Again, very conscious community, very conscious people. Their land is completely permaculture
Yes.
now. And this is a farm just right next to our farm.
Beatty?
No, actually, our neighbors up the road.
Okay,
Yeah,
got
they're
it.
wonderful people. But the conversation really was about, what's it going to take?
Yeah.
What's it going to take to really take this idea that's in Kiss the Ground
Yep.
that so many people have signed on to,
Yeah.
the idea of regenerative agriculture or agroecology, restoring the soil, building it back, using that as the basis for all life. What's it going to take? And I'm actually extremely optimistic.
I think it's going to take people like you.
Well, yes, but here's what I wanted to say about your China comment. I'm extremely optimistic about bizarre, totalitarian regimes that we otherwise hate making a big difference in terms of planetary health.
Well, look at Cuba.
And
100%
exactly.
organic island.
And here's why.
Because they're like, guess what? You guys aren't going to come here and ruin our soil.
Well, and it was cheaper. At the end of the day,
Absolutely, it
was the
is.
most economic way
Absolutely.
to feed the most people. And so when we look at China and we look at the communist regime and we look at India and we look at the corruption that's there and we go, my God, this could represent 3.5, maybe 4 billion people by the mid-century. Guess what? Those 4 billion people might be humanity's greatest hope at
Absolutely.
balancing the climate because the leadership can make such sweeping decisions.
And it makes economic sense. And it makes sense. It actually just makes sense.
And I'm less hopeful, ironically, about our own country.
Because we're spoiled. We're spoiled. We have no concept. I mean, traveling to India, traveling to Sri Lanka, traveling through Indonesia, traveling in South America, you get to see how spoiled we are when you hit the road.
Yeah.
And my first trip to India I was 26 or 27. I just remember thinking, oh my God, we just don't know. I just remember thinking our news is so biased. Everything. I was watching the news in India the first time, and a man with a turban, a Sikh gentleman. I learned meditation in Amritsar at the Golden Temple, and the Sikh gentleman in a turban is talking about the peace efforts between Pakistan and India. And then I went to the border and I saw them at sunset come out and they shake each other's hands across the border. Thousands of people from both countries come to see this intention of them shaking hands and creating peace. And I thought, what the hell are we doing? We're talking about building more walls. We're talking about, so you want to know how we're going to make this happen? It's love. I mean, I hate to sound like super woo, but I have to say, until we can love our neighbor for real and really get into the spirit and the soul of doing good and doing right all the time, above and beyond our greed and our need to feed our ego, until then, I mean, we are going to be left behind. And so if we lose our place at the table, it was interesting watching Trump during one of the I can't remember which meeting it was. He basically was walking around. I think an Australian, broadcaster showed it. He had no place to sit. And I thought, you know what? This is so symbolic. We are losing our place at the table because we are lacking leadership. And until, and maybe that's what we deserve.
And maybe just like you with your son, your back was against the wall and you came up with something not just brilliant, but good for the planet, good for people overseas. Maybe that's where maybe we have to get to the bottom.
We're super comfy.
Yeah, we are still. We're very comfortable. Zhena Muzyka, this has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Just as all of our conversations are amazing. But I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for publishing the Kiss the Ground book.
You are so welcome. It is it's a crowning glory for me. A gift. Thank you.
Well, mutual admiration, mutual respect. Where can people learn more about you? Because you're giving authors academies. You're giving, you have an amazing brain trust academy that I've heard about where you take a small number of people and you take them through a multi-month journey to express their inner business person, but in a conscious way.
Well, yeah, it's basically excavating for their truth and then proclaiming it. And so
how can people connect with you? How can they get more of you?
Well, Zhena, Zhena.tv.
Zhena.tv.
That's it.
You really are your own TV network. It's great. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
This has been The Big Picture Show with your host, Josh Tickell. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you like, and make sure to get not just Kiss the Ground the book, but Life by the Cup. Check out Zhena TV. Thanks for listening. Have a great week, everyone. Welcome to The Big Picture Show with your host, Josh Tickell. We are the new media, so don't forget to like and share this podcast.